The billionaire had grown used to a life governed by schedules, meetings, and deadlines. Every day was meticulously planned, each hour accounted for, each task executed with precision. Success had become second nature, a constant companion that demanded attention, focus, and sacrifice. And yet, despite the wealth, the power, and the accomplishments, there was a quiet unrest creeping through his days. Fatigue lingered at the edges of his mind. Headaches that wouldn't go away gnawed at him. And for the first time in years, he felt a sense of vulnerability he could not ignore. His assistant, ever watchful and persistent, insisted that he undergo a medical check-up. Reluctantly, he agreed, more out of curiosity than concern, convinced that this would be a simple procedure that would take little of his time. The ride to the private medical facility was calm, yet an unfamiliar tension settled in his chest. The building itself was impressive, sleek and modern, designed to cater to an elite clientele who valued discretion as much as skill. Entering the lobby, the billionaire noticed the faint hum of activity, the polished floors reflecting the soft light above, and the subtle scent of antiseptic mixed with fresh flowers. Everything seemed orderly, almost serene, yet there was an undercurrent of anticipation in the air that he couldn't quite explain. After completing formalities, he was led to a consultation room, a space bright and minimalistic, equipped with state-of-the-art medical instruments. He had assumed the session would be straightforward, basic vitals, blood pressure, a few questions, and perhaps some minor tests. But then the door opened, and the room shifted from ordinary to something unrecognizably charged. Time seemed to pause. There, standing in a pristine white coat, was the doctor assigned to him. At first glance, everything about the doctor was professional, calm, precise, confident. But there was something strikingly familiar in the way the doctor moved, something that tugged at a memory buried deep in the billionaire's mind. A wave of shock, disbelief, and an unexplainable recognition swept over him. It was impossible, yet undeniable. The doctor's gaze met his, and for a fraction of a second, the composed exterior faltered. The eyes widened ever so slightly, a silent acknowledgement that something profound had just occurred. Then professionalism returned like a shield, and the doctor greeted him with a polite, "Good morning," voice steady but slightly hesitant, betraying the effort to maintain composure. The billionaire's mind raced. He tried to focus on the surroundings, the medical instruments, the clipboard in the doctor's hand, anything that could anchor him in the present and away from the sudden surge of memories. But it was no use. Every detail of the doctor's presence reminded him of someone from his past, someone he had loved and lost, whose absence had lingered like a quiet ache in the depths of his heart. "Yes, you're the doctor," he finally asked, his voice a mixture of surprise and disbelief. "Yes," the doctor replied, voice calm yet carefully measured. "I'll be conducting your evaluation today." A gentle gesture indicated the chair, a subtle invitation to sit, and yet the air between them felt charged with a tension that no polite greeting could dispel. The billionaire lowered himself into the chair, attempting to adopt the usual air of authority and control, but it was difficult. There was something magnetic about the doctor's presence, something that drew him in despite years of trying to move past old emotions. Each movement, each glance, each small, measured gesture seemed to resonate with unspoken familiarity. Memories began to surface unbidden, the laughter shared in private moments, the quiet conversations that had once felt infinite, the warmth and comfort of a presence that had shaped his world more than he had realized. The checkup began. The doctor worked efficiently, checking vitals, taking notes, and maintaining a professional demeanor. But every touch, every adjustment of a cuff, every gentle press on the wrist sent ripples through the billionaire's body. The pulse in his veins seemed to respond to the slightest contact, betraying the calm he tried to maintain. The doctor noticed, but the training and professionalism held firm, concealing any sign of awareness. Still, the briefest flicker in the eyes, the pause in movement hinted at recognition, at memory, at a connection that neither could fully ignore. Small talk began, perfunctory at first, clinical in tone. Questions about lifestyle, diet, and sleep patterns were exchanged, but beneath the surface, the conversation carried layers of meaning. Every word, every tone, every subtle gesture seemed to be laden with unspoken emotions, a delicate dance between the past and the present. The billionaire felt the pull of nostalgia, of longing, and perhaps of regret. The doctor's careful attention reminded him of care, of intimacy, of someone who had once been integral to his world. As tests continued, the room became a space suspended between professional responsibility and personal history. Every measured instruction from the doctor, every clinical observation, was interwoven with the weight of shared memories neither had intended to confront. The billionaire found himself acutely aware of the small details, the tilt of the doctor's head when listening, the soft precision of movements, the subtle way the eyes lingered on him when writing notes. Each gesture evoked an echo of familiarity, an emotional resonance that shook the careful control he had built around himself. Even the simple act of the doctor's fingers brushing his wrist while checking his pulse carried profound significance. It was a professional touch, necessary for the task at hand, yet it triggered a cascade of emotions, a reminder of closeness and trust that had existed long ago. The billionaire felt his heartbeat accelerate, an involuntary response he could not hide, and a faint awareness passed over the doctor's expression, an almost imperceptible moment of acknowledgement that they were not strangers. That time had not completely erased the bond that once existed. By the time the initial tests were complete, both were acutely aware that this encounter was no ordinary meeting. It had become a crossroads of the past and present, a collision of memory and reality. The billionaire rose from the chair, and for a fleeting instant, words seemed possible, yet unnecessary. The unspoken acknowledgement of the moment, the shared awareness of what had been lost, and the lingering connection that had survived years apart created a tension that neither could deny. As the billionaire left the room, a quiet, profound realization settled in. Some encounters were not planned, some meetings were orchestrated by forces beyond intention. Life had a way of forcing reflection, of bringing unresolved emotions to the surface when least expected. This meeting, brief and seemingly routine, had stirred something deeper, memories, longing, and the awareness that the story between them was far from over. Even in the sterile, professional environment of a medical checkup, the encounter had become a reminder of vulnerability, connection, and the undeniable power of human emotion. The billionaire stepped out into the hallway, carrying with him not just the results of the checkup, but the weight of a moment that had altered everything. Success and distance could not erase what had been built between them. And as he walked away, he realized that some meetings were not about diagnosis or treatment. They were about awakening, about remembering, and perhaps about the possibility that some stories were meant to continue even after years of absence. Even as the checkup continued, the billionaire found himself struggling to focus. Every beep of the machine, every note on the chart, and every measured instruction from the doctor seemed to pull his mind elsewhere. Memories began surfacing unbidden, like fragments of a life he thought he had left behind. It wasn't just nostalgia. It was a tidal wave of regret, a vivid replay of moments that had shaped the person he had become and yet left a hollow space where something essential had once been. He remembered the laughter, light and effortless, that had once filled quiet evenings. The way the doctor's presence had brought warmth to the simplest of spaces, how a single glance could make the world feel less overwhelming. It was the little things, the subtle smile when he joked, the gentle encouragement during hard days, the care that never demanded anything in return, that had etched themselves into his memory. And now, seeing her again, in a place so ordinary yet intimate, all those memories surged back with a force that left him breathless. The billionaire felt the weight of the years that had passed, the choices he had made, the moments he had let slip away. There had been opportunities to reach out, to speak, to act differently, yet pride, ambition, and the relentless demands of his world had kept him from doing so. He remembered the arguments, the misunderstandings, the small cracks that had grown into an unbridgeable distance. And now, facing the doctor, he realized how those moments had shaped him, not just as a businessman, but as a human being. Every success he had achieved felt slightly diminished in comparison to the love he had lost. Meanwhile, the doctor moved with the same precision and calm, attending to her duties, while the past seemed to hover in the room like a silent observer. The billionaire noticed the subtle lines in her expression, the faint tension that suggested she too was revisiting memories she had long tried to forget. There was a quiet dignity in the way she maintained professionalism, yet the slightest hesitation, the soft flicker of recognition in her eyes, betrayed a hidden storm of emotion. It was as if time itself had been suspended, leaving them both to navigate an invisible landscape of shared history. Every question about lifestyle, diet, or sleep seemed to carry double meaning. As the billionaire answered, he realized how acutely aware he was of her presence, how every word and gesture resonated with memories long buried. The simple act of sitting across from her, watching her focus on his well-being, brought back an intimacy he hadn't experienced in years. The way she moved, the way she adjusted equipment, even the smallest, unconscious gestures, reminded him of a time when life had been simpler, when their connection had been the center of his universe. He found himself recalling the moments that had hurt him the most, the arguments left unresolved, the nights he had chosen work over presence, the words left unsaid. Guilt gnawed at him quietly, a subtle ache that made him wince even as he tried to remain composed. He realized how much he had taken for granted, not just her love, but the comfort, understanding, and patience that had been offered freely. The weight of regret pressed against him, a reminder that no amount of wealth, power, or achievement could replace the bonds of the heart. The doctor noticed the shift in his demeanor. Though every movement was measured, her intuition detected the undercurrent of vulnerability that lay beneath his carefully constructed exterior. There was something in the way he answered questions, the way he shifted in his seat, that spoke of a deeper emotional unrest. She maintained her composure, but she too felt the pull of memory, the tug of emotions that had not been entirely forgotten. The professional veneer was strong, but it could not entirely mask the resonance of years spent apart in hearts that had never fully let go. The billionaire's thoughts wandered further, tracing the paths of what might have been. He recalled moments of laughter in quiet rooms, the sensation of being understood without explanation, the shared glances that had conveyed more than words ever could. He remembered the warmth of her hand in his, the subtle reassurances in times of stress, and the comfort of someone who had believed in him, even when he doubted himself. Those memories, once comforting, now carried a bittersweet sting, proof that the love they had shared had been real, profound, and enduring. He realized that regret was not just about lost opportunities. It was about awareness, about understanding what truly mattered. In the sterile environment of the check-up, surrounded by charts, monitors, and routine procedures, he confronted the truth he had avoided for years. He had lost something irreplaceable. Success and wealth could not fill the void left by absence, nor could they recreate the moments that had slipped through his fingers. The doctor's presence served as both a mirror and a reminder, reflecting his own shortcomings and illuminating the depth of his feelings. As the session progressed, the billionaire noticed the subtle gestures of care and attention that had always defined the doctor. Every question asked with gentle concern, every instruction given with patience, spoke to a history of empathy and understanding. It was a quiet reminder of what he had once cherished, a stark contrast to the years spent immersed in ambition and achievement. He realized how much he had underestimated the value of presence, the power of attention, and the irreplaceable warmth of human connection. By the time the evaluation was nearly complete, both were aware that the encounter had stirred something far greater than a routine medical check-up. Memories had resurfaced, regrets had been acknowledged, and emotions long suppressed now hovered just beneath the surface. The billionaire left the room with a newfound understanding of his own heart, carrying with him the awareness that wealth and success were meaningless without the people who truly mattered. The doctor had not only conducted a checkup, but had inadvertently become a catalyst for reflection, a reminder that some connections endure beyond time, distance, and circumstance. The encounter ended professionally, yet its impact lingered. The billionaire walked through the hospital corridors with a heavy but enlightening sense of introspection. He knew that the past could not be changed, but he also recognized that awareness and acknowledgement could open the door to something new. A chance to reconcile, to make amends, or perhaps to rediscover what had been lost. In the quiet aftermath, the memory of that meeting, of the presence of the doctor, and the cascade of emotions it had awakened became an indelible mark on his heart. It was a reminder that some memories, some regrets, and some connections are too powerful to be ignored, and that the heart, no matter how successful the mind, always finds its way back to what truly matters. As the evaluation continued, something shifted in the room. The initial tension, born of shock and resurfaced memories, gradually transformed into a subtle, almost imperceptible energy, a spark neither could fully explain yet both felt. Every glance between the billionaire and the doctor seemed heavier now, charged with emotion and history. Words felt unnecessary at times. A tilt of the head, a fleeting eye contact, a small, almost accidental brush of hands carried more weight than any conversation could. It was as if time had compressed, past and present intertwining in the quiet space of the consultation room. The billionaire became acutely aware of the nuances in the doctor's movements. The way she adjusted a cuff, the careful manner in which she scribbled notes, the tilt of her head when listening, all of it seemed familiar, almost comforting. He realized that these small gestures, once unnoticed or taken for granted, now resonated deeply, reminding him of the intimacy they had shared before life pulled them apart. There was a rhythm to her presence, a subtle harmony that made the room feel both professional and intimately personal. He noticed the doctor's attention to detail, not just in the clinical sense, but in the way she seemed attuned to him, to the faintest signs of discomfort, tension, or unease. Every movement was precise, yet there was a softness underlying it, a hint of care that had once drawn him to her. When she adjusted his posture for a test, their hands briefly touched. It was fleeting, a passing contact, but enough to send a jolt through him. A reminder the physical and emotional connection they had shared was not entirely extinguished. The doctor, too, felt the change in energy. Despite her rigorous professional training, despite years of maintaining emotional boundaries, she could not entirely ignore the subtle chemistry that lingered between them. There was an awareness in her chest, a quiet fluttering of emotions that reminded her of the depth of what had once existed. She caught herself noticing the billionaire's posture, the faint tension in his shoulders, the way he held himself, a careful mix of control and vulnerability. There was a familiarity in it that stirred something deep within her, a memory of someone she had once trusted completely. Every glance became a conversation, every small gesture a form of communication. The billionaire found himself leaning in slightly, drawn to the warmth and presence of the doctor, while she maintained her professional composure, though not without effort. It was a delicate dance, a game of proximity and restraint, where the weight of shared history lent every interaction significance. Even the simple act of passing a medical instrument across the desk carried an unspoken intimacy, a reminder of the closeness they had once shared. The billionaire reflected on how easily the past could resurface through such small moments. In years of meetings, boardrooms, and public appearances, he had never felt this kind of pull, this quiet connection that spoke louder than words. He realized that the spark he felt was not merely nostalgia or longing, it was recognition, a deep-seated reminder that some bonds do not fade with time. It was a connection that had survived absence, a thread linking hearts across years of separation. For the doctor, the experience was equally poignant. She found herself observing the billionaire, not just as a patient, but as someone who had once been central to her life. There was an almost imperceptible tension in the way she moved around him, a careful attention that went beyond the professional. The memories of shared laughter, of quiet moments of understanding, and of vulnerability offered freely, all seemed to hover in the air between them. She realized that, despite years of distance, the connection they had built could not be dismissed entirely. At one point, the billionaire coughed lightly, and the doctor instinctively reached to offer a glass of water. Their hands met over the glass for a brief second, and both felt the current of familiarity, the flash of intimacy that neither could deny. It was subtle, almost accidental, yet loaded with unspoken meaning. The billionaire's eyes met the doctor's, and in that instant, time seemed suspended. Two people, separated by years, yet bound by the quiet power of connection that neither had anticipated encountering again. The room was quiet, save for the hum of medical equipment, yet it felt electric. Every action, no matter how small, seemed amplified by memory and emotion. The billionaire was aware of the subtle shifts in expression on the doctor's face, the fleeting glances that betrayed recognition and lingering affection. He felt the pull of the past, tempered by the awareness of the present, creating a tension that was both exhilarating and terrifying. The doctor continued her work with professionalism, but beneath it, there was a careful awareness of the emotional undercurrent. She noted the slight stiffening in the billionaire's posture, the quick intake of breath at minor touches, the way his eyes lingered just a moment longer than necessary. It was all telling, silent indicators of feelings that had not disappeared, memories that had not faded, and a connection that remained alive despite years of separation. As the evaluation proceeded, the billionaire found himself becoming increasingly aware of the power of these subtle interactions. He realized that attraction, connection, and love were not always expressed through grand gestures or declarations. Sometimes it was the small moments, the way someone moved, the sound of their voice, the fleeting contact of hands that carried the greatest weight. And in this room, filled with instruments and charts, the spark between him and the doctor burned quietly, yet intensely. By the end of the session, both the billionaire and the doctor recognized the undeniable truth. The connection between them was still present. It was quiet, subtle, yet powerful, an undercurrent that could not be ignored. The brief interactions, the shared glances, the accidental touches had reminded them both that history, emotion, and intimacy could survive distance and time. They parted professionally, but the spark lingered, a silent promise of something yet unresolved, something waiting to be explored beyond the sterile walls of the consultation room. As the billionaire left, he felt a strange mixture of exhilaration and anticipation. The encounter had reminded him that the past was never truly gone, that the heart remembered what the mind often tried to suppress, and that even the smallest gestures could reignite feelings long thought dormant. The doctor, watching him leave, felt a similar stir, a recognition that the quiet sparks between them were not merely memories, but an active, living connection waiting for a moment to be acknowledged. In the quiet aftermath, both understood that the session had been more than a check-up. It had been a reminder of the subtle, yet profound ways in which human connection persists, survives, and manifests in the smallest gestures. And though neither spoke of it aloud, the unspoken truth was clear sometimes. The most powerful sparks are those that simmer quietly beneath the surface, waiting for the right moment to ignite fully. By the time the evaluation was complete, the atmosphere in the room had shifted. The initial shock and tension had softened into something more intimate, something heavy with unspoken words and emotions that neither could ignore. The billionaire remained seated, feeling a sudden, compelling need to break the fragile professional barrier that had existed between them. The doctor, having completed her notes, looked up with a composed expression, yet the billionaire could see a flicker of something deeper, an awareness that she, too, felt the gravity of the encounter. For years, the billionaire had mastered the art of control. Boardrooms, contracts, and public appearances required precision and composure, leaving no room for vulnerability. But in this quiet, sterile room, all that control seemed unnecessary, almost meaningless. His chest tightened as memories of the past mingled with the present, and he realized that he could no longer suppress the truth that had lingered inside him for years. The weight of regret and longing had grown too heavy to ignore. Finally, he spoke, voice low but steady, carrying a mixture of hesitation, fear, and honesty. "I never stopped thinking about you," he admitted, the words feeling foreign yet liberating on his tongue. "Every achievement, every milestone, it all felt empty without you. I thought I could bury it under work, under travel, under success. But the truth is, I never forgot." The doctor's eyes softened, betraying the internal struggle she fought to conceal. There was a pause, a moment suspended in time, as if the room itself were holding its breath. She had maintained professionalism, had guarded her emotions carefully, yet the billionaire's words had unlocked something inside her, something she had quietly protected over the years. The memories, the shared experiences, the connection, they had not faded entirely. They lingered, quietly persistent, like an ember refusing to die. "I thought I had moved on," she whispered, voice barely audible, yet charged with emotion. "I told myself I had too, but the truth is, part of me never left. I tried to bury it, to convince myself that it was in the past, But every time I think about those days, every time I think about you, I realize it wasn't really over. The billionaire's chest tightened further. The words hung in the air, heavy with years of longing and regret. His hands, usually so steady and confident, now fidgeted slightly as he leaned forward, closing the gap between them. Though still respecting the professional space, "I know I made mistakes," he continued, voice breaking just slightly. "I let ambition and ego come between us. I chose work over us, over what truly mattered. And I can't change the past, but I can be honest about the present, and I can try to make things right." For the doctor, it was as if a dam had broken. The careful composure she had maintained for years now gave way to vulnerability, the walls she had built around her heart suddenly feeling unnecessary, even futile. "I loved you," she admitted, the words escaping before she could stop them. "I still care, I never stopped. I just didn't know how to reach you, and I didn't want to be hurt again." Silence filled the room, yet it was not uncomfortable. It was heavy with honesty, with shared emotion, with the quiet recognition of a love that had never truly faded. The billionaire swallowed hard, feeling a mix of relief, awe, and longing. He reached out slightly, careful not to overstep, letting his hand hover near hers, a tentative offering of connection. "Then let me try," he said softly. "Let me make this right. No excuses, no distractions, no running away. Just us. The way it should have been." The doctor's gaze met his, eyes glistening with unshed tears, a combination of disbelief and hope shining through. For a moment, neither spoke, allowing the weight of their words, the honesty of their feelings, and the intensity of their shared history to fill the room. The air between them seemed charged, almost electric, as if acknowledging that this moment was pivotal, a turning point in a story paused, but never truly finished. I don't know if it will be easy," she admitted finally, voice trembling slightly. "Years have passed. Things have changed. We've changed. But part of me wants to see if what we had can still exist, if it's still possible." The billionaire's chest swelled with emotion. Every word resonated deeply, every sentence carrying the promise of a second chance, a possibility that had seemed unimaginable just moments ago. "It will take time," he acknowledged. "I understand that. But I am willing to try as long as you are. I am here fully, without anything to hide, without anything to protect myself from. I just want you." A tear slid down the doctor's cheek, and for the first time, the billionaire saw the depth of her vulnerability, the fragility beneath the professional exterior, and the humanity that had drawn him in so many years ago. Slowly, carefully, she reached out, letting their hands meet, a touch charged with years of emotion, longing, and unspoken confession. The physical contact was minimal, yet it carried the weight of everything they had ever felt, every moment lost and every emotion remembered. They remained like that for several heartbeats, hands touching lightly, eyes locked, breathing synchronizing in a shared moment of honesty and connection. Neither needed to speak. The vulnerability they had both admitted in words now found expression in the quiet, gentle contact. The room, filled with charts, medical equipment, and sterile light, had transformed into a space of emotional revelation, a place where truth, honesty, and raw emotion were laid bare without fear or pretense. Finally, the billionaire spoke again, voice soft but determined. "I can't promise the past won't hurt us, but I can promise this: I will not let distance, ambition, or fear come between us again. I am here entirely, and I want to see where we can go from here." The doctor nodded, a tearful smile breaking across her face. "Then let's try," she whispered. Let's see if we can find our way back together. And in that quiet room, amid the hum of medical equipment and the soft light, two hearts that had endured years of absence, silence, and regret finally found the courage to speak their truths. Vulnerability, honesty, and confession became the bridge between them, proving that sometimes the bravest act of all is to open one's heart, to admit mistakes, and to allow love the chance to return. The session ended professionally, yet neither could leave without feeling the weight of what had been shared. The billionaire walked out with a sense of hope he had not felt in years, while the doctor lingered briefly, letting herself feel the magnitude of their renewed connection. Both understood, without speaking, that this moment was the beginning of something fragile, tentative, yet profoundly real, a second chance at what had once seemed lost forever. After the confession, the atmosphere between them shifted entirely. What had once been a sterile, professional environment now carried a quiet intimacy, the kind that exists when two people recognize the depth of their shared history and the possibility of the future. The billionaire sat back for a moment, absorbing the weight of the doctor's words, the honesty they had exchanged, and the electric current of emotion that still lingered between them. He realized that time, distance, and circumstance had altered much, but they had not erased what was essential, the connection that had endured years of absence. The doctor, too, felt a change within herself. Years of restraint, of maintaining professional boundaries, of guarding her heart, seemed almost trivial in that moment. The feelings she had once thought buried were alive again, powerful and undeniable. She noticed the small gestures, the subtle way the billionaire's eyes softened when he looked at her, the careful way he leaned forward to bridge a gap, not just physically, but emotionally. It was a reminder that love, when genuine, does not always fade. It waits patiently, quietly, until the right moment to return. The billionaire broke the silence, voice low and sincere. "We've been given an unexpected opportunity," he said. "Years apart, mistakes made, but we're here now. That means something. It means there's a chance to try again, to rebuild what we lost, even if slowly, even if it takes effort." The doctor nodded, her eyes glistening with emotion. "I was afraid," she admitted. "Afraid that time had changed everything, that the gap between us was too wide to bridge. But sitting here, I realized that the connection we shared was never truly gone. And maybe, just maybe, it's still strong enough to survive now." A quiet understanding passed between them. It was a fragile acknowledgement, yet profoundly powerful. They were no longer the people they had been years ago. Life had shaped them, molded them, taught them lessons the hard way. But perhaps that growth was exactly what was needed to allow them to approach love again with clarity, patience, and intention. It was no longer naive, impulsive love. It was mature, considered, and resilient. The billionaire reached out, this time without hesitation, taking the doctor's hand in his. The touch was gentle, deliberate, and filled with promise. "I want to be present," he said, "truly present. No distractions, no excuses. Just us building something real, something lasting. I don't want to lose this chance." The doctor squeezed his hand, a soft, affirming gesture that carried the weight of years of longing and unspoken emotions. "I want that too," she whispered. "But we need to be honest, to communicate, to trust in each other fully. We can't let pride, fear, or past mistakes come between us again." They sat in silence for a few moments, allowing the magnitude of what they were agreeing to sink in. It was not a declaration of perfection. It was an acknowledgement that love required work, patience, and courage. Yet, It was also a recognition that some connections were rare and precious, worth every effort to preserve and nurture. The billionaire finally spoke again, a soft smile tugging at his lips. "I never imagined that a simple check up would lead to this," he said. "But perhaps some of life's greatest moments are unexpected, unplanned, and arrive when we least anticipate them. This is one of those moments." The doctor smiled in return, tears brimming but controlled. "Life has a strange way of giving second chances," she said. "And maybe this time we won't let it slip away." The subtle sparks of connection that had been building over the course of the check-up now became a steady flame. Every glance, every word, every small touch reinforced the understanding that this was a moment of reconciliation, of rediscovery, of renewed love. The past no longer loomed as a shadow of regret. It had transformed into a foundation upon which they could rebuild. As the billionaire prepared to leave the room, there was a shared acknowledgement that this was only the beginning. Life outside the hospital walls would continue, full of responsibilities, challenges, and distractions. But the commitment they had made to be honest, present, and open to each other was now a guiding force. They had faced the vulnerability of confession and embraced the risk of emotion, and in doing so, they had created a new chapter in their story. Walking down the hallway, the billionaire felt a sense of clarity he had not experienced in years. The weight of wealth, power, and status felt lighter, insignificant compared to the profound joy of rediscovered connection. He realized that the heart, once opened and acknowledged, held far greater value than any achievement. Each step he took carried with it the promise of dedication, care, and a willingness to nurture this second chance. The doctor watched him leave, feeling a mix of hope and anticipation. The encounter had reminded her that life could be unpredictable, that love could endure time and distance, and that even the most carefully guarded hearts could find a way back to connection. She took a deep breath, steadying herself, and allowed herself to feel the excitement of a future that had once seemed impossible. In the quiet moments that followed, both understood that their reunion was not just a fleeting encounter, but a genuine opportunity. It was a chance to rewrite the narrative, to build something stronger, wiser, and more enduring than before. They had faced the vulnerability of honesty, the courage to confront their feelings, and the humility to acknowledge past mistakes. And in doing so, they had discovered the true essence of a second chance, a love that was patient, aware, and willing to grow. As the billionaire and the doctor returned to their separate lives, a silent promise lingered between them, a commitment to nurture this rekindled bond, to explore the depths of their connection, and to embrace the uncertainty of love with courage. The story that had once been paused, interrupted by life's demands, was now unfolding again, richer, deeper, and filled with the hope of what was yet to come. They had been given a gift, the chance to love again, consciously, deliberately, and with full awareness of the value of the heart. And in that recognition, they found not just hope, but a profound sense of fulfillment, knowing that sometimes second chances are not just possible, they are extraordinary.